In 2026, something was written in black and white that until a few years ago would have seemed unthinkable. The state of emergency is even more evident today than in 1988. A short, cold, carefully considered statement, and precisely for this reason, destined to spark discussion. This man's name is Don Davide Pagliarani. He is the Superior General of the Priestly Society of St. Pius X. The organization the Vatican is preparing to excommunicate for the second time in 38 years. And on May 21, 2026, this letter to its members became public. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these words aren't an act of rebellion. You'll understand why there's something much more uncomfortable and much deeper. And you will understand why, on July 1st, 2026, exactly 38 years after the excommunication of 1988, history will be made in Canon. The fraternity he leads is not a small community of nostalgics. It comprises 700 priests, 264 seminarians, and chapels in more than 50 countries around the world. 600,000 faithful who entrust themselves to this structure every Sunday to receive the sacraments, educate their children in the faith, and live as Catholics in the full sense. But this reality has a dramatic structural problem: the bishops. The society currently has only 2 bishops in office, both of them elderly. One died in 2024, another in 2025. Without new bishops, there are no new priestly ordinations. Without priests, there are no sacraments. Without sacraments, the fraternity disappears within a generation. It is in this context that on February 9, 2026, Don Davide Pagliarani made the announcement: 4 episcopal consecrations on July 1st in Canon, Switzerland, without a papal mandate. Just like in 1988, and Rome's response was immediate. Here's what we know for sure. On March 7, 2026, Pagliarani signed a letter to the members of the fraternity. It wasn't made public immediately. It was distributed confidentially to priests and faithful. On May 21, 2026, FSSPX.news published it in full, and the words fell like stones. The first: the state of emergency that could already be invoked in 1988 is, unfortunately, even more evident in 2026. This isn't an opinion, nor is it a cry of alarm. It's a clinical diagnosis, and the diagnosis has worsened. Let's pause for a moment. In the same letter, Pagliarani writes, "The reason behind the decision to proceed with episcopal consecrations is the salvation of souls. It should not be seen as mere rhetoric or a simple canonical justification." He himself separates his decision from these categories because he knows that the accusation is already prepared. And then, we must love the Church, even if its official representatives were to declare us excommunicated and schismatic again. Not bitterness, not triumphalism, love. This single sentence captures the entire distance between those who defend tradition and those who abandon it. And finally, we must never give in to bitterness. This is perhaps the most revealing point of the entire letter. A man who leads 700 priests and 600,000 faithful toward a historic confrontation with Rome, knowing he risks a new excommunication for the second time in 38 years, tells his followers, no bitterness. It's not resignation. It's the freedom of those who act from a position of spiritual strength, not fear. To understand the weight of these words, one must understand what state of necessity means in canon law. It is not panic, it is not arrogance, it is not a pretext. It is the rigorous application of the principle that the salvation of souls, the salus animarum, is the supreme law of the Church. Canon 1323 of the Code of Canon Law establishes that in a state of objective necessity, the latae sententiae penalty does not apply automatically. Canon 1324 provides that it can be further attenuated when the act is done to avoid serious harm to the spiritual life of souls. In 1988, Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre proceeded with 4 episcopal consecrations on June 30th without a papal mandate. The next day, July 1st, 1988, the Congregation for Bishops declared him excommunicated latae sententiae by virtue of Canon 1382 of the Code of Canon Law. 21 years later, on January 21, 2009, Benedict XVI revoked that excommunication. And in his letter to the bishops of the world on March 10, 2009, Benedict XVI recognized that it was a grave crisis in the Church, and that keeping our backs turned toward part of the ecclesial community was not the answer. It wasn't rhetoric, it was an admission. The punishment of 1988 had been wrong. Yet on May 13, 2026, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernández, prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, released an official statement. The consecrations of July 1st would be a schismatic act subject to latae sententiae excommunication. The same words from 1988, the same categories, as if that letter from Benedict XVI had never been written. And here, things get complicated, significantly, because Pagliarani doesn't just invoke a state of necessity. He states that any declaration of excommunication or schism against the society would be objectively unjust, not pastorally incorrect, not politically inappropriate, objectively unjust, a theological category with precise, non-negotiable weight. Here lies the paradox that no one wants to name. The same institution that approved the blessing of couples in situations contrary to the natural moral order through the fiducia supplicans, which has allowed the German synodal path to proceed without formal intervention for years, which has tolerated decades of liturgical deviations without a single excommunication. This same institution is preparing the excommunication of 700 priests who celebrate the Mass of all time and transmit the doctrine of all time. And the question every Catholic is asking himself at this moment is, how can an excommunication issued by the competent authority be objectively unjust? Pagliarani's answer is precise, because the same authority that would issue the sentence has already demonstrated, with the revocation of 2009, that the sentence of 1988 was unjust. To condemn a second time for the same reasons, with the same pattern, is to repeat the same error already recognized. In an interview with Aldo Maria Valli on April 19, 2026, Pagliarani recalled that Archbishop Lefebvre, in a private conversation, said he would rather die than find himself in opposition to the Vatican. It wasn't rebellion in 1988, it isn't rebellion today. As he himself wrote, it is the response to a cruel necessity, a necessary and inevitable decision, but one taken reluctantly. July 1st, 2026, the date chosen for the consecrations of Econ, is the exact anniversary of the excommunication of 1988. The same date, the same place, the same accusation. As if Providence wanted history to measure itself, and for the right answer to be given on the same day, the wrong answer was given. In 1988, the Vatican predicted that the society would dissolve within a few years. It didn't dissolve, it grew, from 200 priests to 700. From a persecuted community to a global reality with chapels in more than 50 countries. Because when the need is real, objectively, canonically real, no excommunication can erase it, and history has already demonstrated this once. Tradition is not the past. Tradition is the response to the present, even when the present is frightening, even when the establishment resists, even when excommunication is already on the table. 700 priests, 264 seminarians, 600,000 faithful. July 1st won't wait. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment, Amen. God bless you.